What I want to teach you guys on today is how to hear with your eyes. And this is more of let me just ask you a question. How many of you believe that in the world, the earth cries out for his glory? Raise your hand. Well-taught people. How many of you believe by watching the hurricanes and the tornadoes and the tsunamis that he's speaking to us? Raise your hand. Show of hands. Very good. Sometimes, and the word says to desire prophecy. It says to desire all spiritual gifts, but especially prophecy, right? And a lot of times we take that whole reading the earth signs and stuff like that. We leave those to, am I loud enough? Can you, all that matters is that y'all can hear me, right? But sometimes when we hear the whole earthquake and all that and reading those things, we want the Elijah-less people to do, right? Right? But God, how many of you know God speaks to us directly? And would you like me to show you how those things that happen on that grand scale, do you give me permission to bring it home a little bit more intimate to you tonight? Can I do that? This is going to be a very interesting talk. And I want to go through some scriptures kind of to back up what I'm saying. But you remember when Elisha, the guy was really afraid, and he said, well, open your eyes. And what did he see? What did he see? He saw chariots of fire, right? So can we infer by those scriptures that there's a veil, right? Dreams are veiled, aren't they? They're veiled. In fact, Scripture says that they're riddled or that they are dark speech, right? And so they're veiled. Why are they veiled? It's to the glory of a master to hide a thing, and it's to the glory of a king to search a matter out, right? Those who have ears to hear. All of Matthew speaks of what? Speaks of how to hear, how to see behind the veil. And what we need, it says to desire prophecy, but I think in our Western culture, we think that means to stand up on a platform and prophesy to each other. And that's kind of scary for us common folk, right? Right? I mean, could I pull any one of you up here and say, okay, prophesy? Could we do it? Absolutely. Because raise your hand if you're prophetic. Oh, everybody raise your hand because we're all prophetic. Prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. It's just hearing from the Lord and delivering the message. That's all it is, right? Very simple. But our Western culture shows that we stand. I like to get close and intimate, huh? But I can't really. I can. It just my warning bells go off. But it's our Western culture says prophecy is this and delivering the word, right? But I want to show you tonight that prophecy really is in our everyday language. See, all of this is a veil, all of it. See, Jesus spoke in a veil, didn't he? Jesus spoke parables. Dreams are parabolic messages. Dreams really are the language of heaven, right? So if that's the language of heaven, and heaven's always speaking, then see, all of this is just a veil. And now I must learn how to read my natural surroundings as though, what if this were a dream? And so I teach my class. In fact, one of my class members are here, which I thought you were in charge of my class tonight. No? Was Patty in charge of my class tonight? Well, somebody's not teaching my class tonight because I got here and the guitar player is my teacher tonight. So it's like, But we had a girl in one of my intern classes, and I teach my people to always look around and to find what's not normally happening, to try to read as a dream symbol. Because see, the truth is that this earth is crying out to speak to us. As Jesus gets closer, it cries out. And see, a lot of stuff happens in the spiritual, but see, it will begin to manifest because he's going to get our attention. He's going to get our attention. In fact, we had a prophetic word by a man named Ron Campbell. Have you guys heard of him? He's from South Africa. Can I just tell you, a prophetic word sounds so much better in South African, right? It just sounded like it was going to happen. And so he gave us this word, and, because I teach on Joseph and I teach a message that, Joseph was given a word and then his whole life fell apart around him, right? He was given a word that said all his brothers and sisters, all his brothers were going to bow down to him, right? And then he ended up in some prison somewhere off in Egypt, right? Looked completely different than he thought it was going to. And so I teach people that when a word comes, that it's going to be tested. The revelation of the word is going to be tested. And if the prophecy is true, then for a season it's going to look completely opposite of the word that was given. The truth is, can you walk it through? The truth is can you stay fast to what you know is true? That's what he wants to see. He wants to give you the promise. See, Joseph had the promise that those would bow down around him. See, but in Joseph's mind, he thought, my brothers are going to bow down. See, because he had limited knowledge. My brothers are going to bow down around me. See, God had a whole nother plan, didn't he? Not just his brothers and a whole nation, right? But he had to go through a time of refinement and testing and trial. He had to stay fast to the word. I guarantee you he must have been in that prison sometimes going, and that dream you gave me that got me here? At some point, he had to think, we had this word by Ron Campbell, and I'm in a season of my life where I'm going, But see, I teach this message, so one should think. And so as I'm going through this, everything seems to be falling around about me, unraveling around me, but I'm staying fast. I'm staying fast to what I know is true and to the promise that he gave me. See, the dream was a prophetic word to Joseph. And so I'm staying fast, and I started feeling stuff in the spiritual that was happening, but I really didn't take care of it in the spiritual. And then what happened was a week after that, we generally don't have anybody steal from us, really. And so someone had come up onto our property at night and stole my son's bicycle, $350 bicycle that he had just gotten for Christmas. And so I stepped back because I know how to read behind the veil, okay? So most of the world would go, our bike was stolen. But see, I read behind a veil because, see, all of this is a manifestation of what's in the spiritual. So I said, if this were a dream, what would it mean? My bike was stolen. Generally, that doesn't happen. So I began to ponder it. Didn't really do it. I was just kind of watching the situation. I felt violated. And I knew that the enemy had stolen from me, and the enemy has now come up onto my property. And I told my husband, he's now stepped up on our property. He's trespassed. And I prayed, and then I think a week later, our car was broken into. I think we had one other time when we were on the mission field, our car had gotten broken into. But our car was broken into, and that was a huge violation, right? And I remember looking at my husband, he goes, the next step is our home. And it caught me, and so I began to pray because, see, I knew a car represented what, all you dreamers? There was an attack against my ministry. Something was coming to violate, and oh, did it. See, then I began to see some things that were going on in ministry that were a violation of my privacy, a violation of my credibility, violation of my reputation. But I'm a little bit smarter than him. So I thought, okay, I'm on it. I know what's going on. And so I begin to see these things, and I look at it and I say, if this were a dream, what would it mean? So these are intimate ways. Another girl in my internship class I was telling you, she was walking down the hall at church, and there was a little yellow rubber ball, just a little yellow rubber ball. And she went to go step on it, and she realized it was there and kept walking. Right? Just like the rest of us would, right? And then you just think nothing else of it. Well, then she was walking back, and she went to go step on it again. She goes, oh. So she picked it up, and she said, okay, Lord, what are you trying to tell me? Because Genesis 41 says, if anything happens twice, it is, and it will come to pass surely, right? very quickly. And so this is the second time she almost stepped on that. So she picked up the ball like a good student and brought it to class. And she said, she put that ball on that table and said, "What is that?" "What?" And so I said, "Well, I don't know. You really need to pray." Because, see, we each have a dream language, right? Each one of us have our very own dream language. And so I use my dream language every single day. In fact, some of my students and my husband, I know, thinks I'm crazy because even in my house, my kids, if this were a dream, what would it mean? But it's very serious, isn't it?
Yes.
Because, see, God is prophesying through the manifestations of what's happening around us, even to what we wear, to even, do you realize that we manifest our calling in such a great way, even before we were saved, that we do what's called resume readings? And I can look at your very first job and probably tell you what your gifting is. Because, see, we manifest it. My very first job was I worked at a driving school. Driving is what? So even before, way before, I was manifesting my calling, which is to help people to operate in their ministries, to bring clarity, right? And then I went on. I grew up in church, but kind of walked away from the Lord, had enough, and pretty much said, if these are the way your people act, I'm just not part of the fan club. And so kind of went on my way. I call it the 3 years of creating my testimony. I did that one for my mother. And so when I went to school, I was going to be a judge. That's what I wanted to be. I was going to be a judge, going to be, become a lawyer, got all the way through. And as I was a paralegal, got radically saved and set on fire. So much for the judgeship. But then I realized that one of my strongest anointings and teachings is on justice. Yes. And it is, I feel called to the message of justice. See, we suffer injustice in order to be given justice. God can't give you justice just because he likes you, because he's fair and balanced in all of his ways. Yes. You have to suffer injustice in order to be given justice. And so he allows the enemy to come and attack. He allows the enemy because we've given him legal ground. That's right. If we have no legal ground, he can't come. But even when we give legal ground, he has to go before the Father. Can I? Can I not? And so what happens is it causes a refinement. See, he hasn't learned yet that when he causes us injustice, the Lord's just watching, because the depth of your valley to injustice is the height of your mountain of justice. Yes. Right? So if, as believers, we take on a new view of injustice, but instead, what do? We get down there with the world. Self-pity. Oh my gosh, I can't make it. What am I going to do? Can you believe so-and-so? And our eyes are on the person. See, in Joseph's world, who betrayed him? His brothers did, right? He used the very people that are closest to you to betray you. And one of the worst betrayals was jealousy, right? He was jealous. He said, as he threw him in the pit, said, and here's to you in your dreams, basically what they said, right? Satan fell because of why? Pride, but it was jealousy, wasn't it? Yes. Because of pride, he entered into jealousy, or he entered into jealousy because of pride, or vice versa. But there was some jealousy there. Pharisees and Jesus. Jealousy. What do you mean you healed that man's blind eyes on Sabbath? You can't do that. He's jealous of the gifting and the power that he was operating in. So jealousy is all around us. And so when we get our eyes off of the person and we recognize that God's just trying to promote us, but we have to suffer injustice because he's fair and balanced. And he wants to promote us. But we've got to get our eyes off of the people. We've got to get our eyes. So we have to see things from a veiled perspective. We have to ask the Lord. Do you know that in Scripture there is lift up thine eyes, and open thine eyes. Every time it said lift up thine eyes, they saw something in the spiritual, but they actually had an encounter.